chop all these siege tanks now. Those drones really desperately trying to run for their lives. There's Wednesday Night
vVv gaming.
Absolute nightmare. You're like, oh, I want to watch this replay, but some Chinese advertising agencies plaster their logos all over, and I have to download that one specific map somewhere on the internet in order to find it. But let's go ahead and talk about Game 6 here. It is going to be not VPSuppy, no, it is going to be xSix's Suppy versus vVv Murder here on Shakura's Plateau. It is going to be another Terran versus Zerg, and I just got to ask you, Gwen, why so many Zerg players?
Well, I mean, this is kind of going to be a little bit of a just kind of like a general. This is what I feel about the state of the game right now. I feel kind of that Zerg is very strong in, you know, the high master to grandmaster kind of levels, simply because Zerg is one of those races where once you have the drone timings down, when you can make drones, when you have to make units, it becomes an easier race to play once you understand those specific timings. And the other races, Terran, for instance, to deal with a very good macro Zerg, you have to have really, really good micro with marine splitting and all that stuff as well. But additionally, you have to have good macro to keep up with them. So I feel like the skill cap may be a little bit higher on a race like Terran. And then Protoss, you know, has its own, you know, complete set of things. I'm not even going to get into that, but one of the things I've noticed is that there seem to be a lot of really good Zerg players, and xSix, we're all about picking up really good players. So we have guys like Suppy, we have guys like Mystic, we have guys like Sleep, simply because, you know, we went out looking for good players. We didn't go out looking for players of specific races, and what we found was that there were a lot of really good Zergs who were interested in joining the team.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. I don't think I would have ever heard that from my other normal co-caster Matron, who is a Zerg player and always just says, you know, Terran's overpowered. So nice to hear a refreshing point of view. No dog on Matron, as I think he'll be posting this up on his channel. But nice to hear that, you know, xSix bringing in 3 Zerg players here on Wednesday Night Starcraft. So you knew you were going to see a lot of Zerg games, just not all from Sleep, as a drone does slip by.
And yep, Sleep and Suppy. So of course, Suppy now sees the gas, he knows the timing, sees that barracks. He's gonna try and deny the supply depot block for a little bit, but I would expect Reactor Hellions here as well. I mean, this would be though a map to deviate from that, and there is a bunker going down.
A bunker is being placed down, as you see the spawning pool, and you know, about 25 seconds from being completed. Drones should be making their way over, and this is always one of those things where, like, even though this SCV built a bunker here, he could cancel that bunker at any time, and the drones have actually lost resources trying to deal with this bunker. He could destroy it and then go, you know what, it's cool. I lost 25 resources. You lost mining time on 4 drones. I can deal with that. I think the average is 1 drone on a mineral patch for a minute is 50 minerals, I think. I don't know. That is a good estimation or guesstimation at this point, based upon all of my StarCraft math.
Yeah, and we do see the Reactor Hellions, pretty standard opening coming out of Murder here. Like I was saying, though, I think this would be the map to deviate from that play, if at all. I mean, Zerg has such a narrow ramp here at the front, and Creep gets there so quickly that it's very easy to just plop a single spine crawler down, throw down like an Evo chamber, and have that pretty well walled off, so that it's not cost effective to do a run by. So I almost would say that I like 2 racks openings on this map a lot, because you can wall off your bottom front as a Terran player, go 2 racks, expand, then throw down a 3rd racks quickly to finish that wall off. But that's not what we see out of Murder. He is doing the standard Hellion opening.
And we'll see how much creep he's really able to deny. Shakura's Plateau does have a little bit of a tricky situation for Zerg trying to establish up a 3rd base. And we'll see if Suppy does run on 2 bases for a little bit of time. I know that Sleep ran on 2 bases for a little bit of time on Shakura's, so we'll see if that does come into play. Perhaps Zerg players are learning how to stay even on bases longer and not falling behind, as the metagame, you know, StarCraft, even though game isn't constantly changing, the way people play it is, and it's going to be a matter of time before new strategies come in and new strategies come in and the old ones fade away, as a Hellion does take control of the center of the map.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We saw, you know, such a evolution in the way all the matchups were played in Brood War. And of course, that's happening in StarCraft 2 right now, and it will get all turned on its head as soon as the expansion, Heart of the Swarm, comes out, which will be soon.
Yeah, soon. I don't know exactly when. I just hear soon from a lot of players and a lot of people. I'm trying to get tidbits of information from my friends over at Blizzard, and they just tell me if we have anything to tell you, I'll be sure to let you know. I'm like, dang it. All right, so
I fortunately have gotten to play a little bit of the internal beta over there, and let me tell you, the Shredder is Imba. And that's all I'm going to say. But, four Hellions now sneaking into the mineral line. They're going to roast some drones, but a good surround with those Lings. And he has lost, actually, all of those Hellions. Wow. So all going down. And just taking a look at the units lost, 3 workers killed there. So I don't feel like that was a good trade for Murder at all. He could have been way more cost-effective with those Hellions.
yeah, and we'll see Suppy also going for that macro hatch that's used to block off his ramp, as you mentioned, and he's really going to be able to utilize that. He is taking the tier 2. He is running on 4 gas, I believe. Yes, 4 gas, so he should be able to do high Mutalisk play. You saw how effective Mutalisks were for sleep on this map. And then he also has a good mineral dump and the larva to do it with this macro hatch. So I like the fact that Suppy got the hatchery. It's a macro hatch inside his base. He's not going to fall behind in terms of larva, and he's still able to do something, and he's kind of hiding the spire here on the high side of the ramp and building it in a location that normally won't get scanned or scouted.
Yeah, that is actually pretty cool out of him. I don't think I've ever seen that spire placement before, so he's going to avoid the scan in the main. And, I mean, at the front, you know, if there's a scan goes down on the natural, they're going to see Evo and a Baneling nest, so they could be expecting, you know, heavy Ling upgrades with some Banelings. A little bit of a drop happening here at the top. That's going to kill off an Overlord. But the other thing to note is that obviously exposes there's a drop. I mean, if you are playing a like non-Korean pro and you fly an Overlord or you fly a medevac past their Overlord, they might miss it, right?
Yeah.
But if you stop and kill off the Overlord, there's no way they're going to miss it.
Well, I think it's at the point where you got to give respect to your player a little bit and your opponent in saying that I assume that you know what you're going to do, but we're going to see a trap here. Suppy is going to be able to capture some of these Marines as the Marines are now up on the ramp. Perhaps the Marines will all get picked up. Nicely done. Not losing any units there. But now, once again, oh no, the drop happening again. Murder needs to pick up all of those Marines, and now losing more Marines second time around.
Yep, he only has 3 left in that medevac. 1 is red, very hurt, and it dies immediately.
As another drop now happening. Yeah, so drops trying to utilize the little plateaus here on Shakura's plateau. The Marines been able to deal a little bit of damage as the Zerglings are rallied right past this location. The third base has been set up by Suppy. You can see now Murder looking to establish his own third base as well. That should be a planetary fortress.
Absolutely. He's going to go to the forward position. Which is, of course, the right thing to do as the Terran player. That allows you a pushing point. You start out from there, and there is this narrow choke leading toward that Xel'Naga watchtower. It's so good. You can either block that off or just put some tanks in there, and Zerglings have to bunch up, and they all get roasted.
Yeah, nicely done there. We'll see what's going to happen. Siege tanks now being added. Planetary Fortress Armory also being added as well. A second engineering bay. So it looks like we are going to be double upgrading for all those Marines and Marauders. And you can see, I like this use of the high ground by Murder here because it gives an early warning system and it allows just Murder to keep track of units that are going to try to run by and perhaps attack this command center as it's upgrading to a planetary fortress. The planetary fortress will complete, and there's not much that really anything can do about it except for these Mutalisks, as they're going to be picking off SCVs.
Absolutely. Should be able to target down those mules. Decides not to, though. And he will be able to pick off another SCV building that missile turret. At the same time, a double drop going on at the third of Suppy. He has a Spinecrawler building, but I don't think he's seen this. No, he's pulling his Mutalisk back now. He's going to see it for sure. And that is actually going to do huge damage. He might just focus down that hatch. No, going for the drones instead. Suppy with the burrow, but it will not be enough as the scan goes down.
Yeah, nicely done, nicely handled here. Murder now already knows that he has dealt a lot of damage here. Murder does have 1-0 upgrades. The Zerglings are 1-0 as well, but it doesn't matter when the Zerglings are all caught up together, and when the Zerglings can't attack, not much damage can be dealt. Another drop happening over here, but Suppy cleaning that up in the main base, but the Extractors are now going to go down, trying to take the lower hit point buildings. The hatchery is still operational, and it looks like Suppy is just going to lose a lot of drones and perhaps be forced to rebuild double extractors.
Yeah, I mean, taking a look at the workers killed, Murder actually killed 19 drones total this game. We know he didn't kill very many at the beginning, but actually losing these medevacs, that's not the best thing for him. But he does have his third base up and running and secured, and did buy him time to get turrets up in his main. So, I mean, that's exactly what Murder needed to do. He basically said, look, I don't have defenses up for your Mutalisks, so I'm just going to drop you to force your Mutalisks to defend so that I can get my defenses up to deal with those. So great play out of him.
And we'll see what's going to happen next. 10 Marines now being trained. Murder is starting to hit a stride now. Macroing up. We're getting the siege tanks. We're getting the Marines. And we're going to move out across the field. Scanner sweeps galore to try to clean up all these creep tumors. Baneling's movement speed now finally being upgraded at the 14-minute mark in the game. It's a little bit late as the siege tanks, as long as it can focus down, Mutal is trying to make their way into the siege tanks. They're unable to do so. The Marines not venturing too far. Tanks cover Marines, Marines cover tanks. Kind of a synergy here on Shakura's Plateau.
Suppy picking off a medevac, that is actually going to hurt this push so much, because now these tanks don't have the super far vision without poaching Marines out pretty far. There's a drop, though, or a couple Marines, rather, landed up at above the third at the same time. Those should get taken out pretty easily, though, as there is some Banelings and a Zergling there. Marines poaching forward, though, targeting down Banelings and Overlords. Suppy is supply blocked.
Yeah, and that's not looking good. Suppy at 137 over 137, now getting up 5 additional Overlords. We'll see how much damage will be had. It looks like all the creep tumors have been destroyed, and Murder, thinking twice about continuing to push, wants to regroup with the rest of this army. As you take a look at the Harvester count, it is 69 to 58, so a slight drone advantage or worker advantage for Suppy, but Murder currently even on food, so that means that he may have a larger army.
Oh, absolutely, and he does. Look at all those Marines streaming across the map. 3 tanks, 2 medevacs as well, and he's just continuing to macro back home, getting the +1 vehicle attack, which of course will allow him to one-shot Zerglings that have the 1 armor once again. And Suppy spreading a lot more creep. He's pulled 2 queens out to re-establish that creep spread and taking a 4th base.
And we'll see what's going to happen here. A Murder holding the Zelnaga Tower did see Banelings burrowing themselves. So he has to know, he has to be careful with these Marines. There is currently no Raven. Level 3 weapons upgrade for the Marines now making their way out as well. As it is going to be 3 bases to 3 with a 4th one on the way for Suppy. Is it going to be enough as the Mutalists simply fly by? And there is the Scanner Sweep. Going to be able to take down some of those Banelings. They're not going to be able to detonate anything at all. And here comes the attack. Siege tank sieging. Is it going to be enough?
We'll have to see. It looks like Baneling's getting huge hits off on everything, and wow, I think Suppy cleaned that up pretty well. There's still Marines, though, and Suppy has kind of lost all of his Banelings, so he really should not be engaging this with the Mutas. He's going to lose so many Mutalisks as the 2 attack, 1 armor Marines do so much damage.
Yeah, the benefit on the armor on those Marines is that it absorbs some of the damage from that Glaive Worm, and the Glaive Worm is really how much, really adds a lot of damage to those Marines, but Suppy just says, you know what, I'm going to counter your Marines with double the amount of Mutalisks, and there's not much you can do, as more and more Mutalisks still get added to this ball.
Absolutely, and a 4th base floating over for Murder, though Suppy has a Zergling burrow there. He is so responsible about doing that all the time.
Yeah, just preventing, if you can delay a command center from landing for a minute, you delay 800 resources from being mined, and that can really change the tide of a battle. As we now see Marines making their way, chasing after Mutalisks again. There's not really that many medevacs, as the Marines now going up against those Mutalisks. Mutalisks are upgraded 2-0, the Marines are upgraded 2-1, soon to be 2-2, and then shortly after that, 3-2.
Drop at the top coming down, though, for Murder, so he's going to be dropping this freshly placed expansion, and he should actually be able to snipe this. Tons of drones being transferred. Those need to get pulled. Suppy realized it at just the last moment, and pulling back all his forces to deal with this. And Murder with a great split on his Marines, but Baneling's coming in, cleaning it up nonetheless.
Yeah, I think Murder should have dealt a lot more damage. Perhaps if he had dropped straight up on those drones, he could have dealt the necessary damage, but he didn't get a good trade there. Dealing, 750 damage to a hatchery, nothing to write home about. It's like, I shot a hatchery and it's now bleeding. Yeah, not much.
I mean, it's not even really bleeding that much. It's just like a little bit bleeding. It's like when you scrape your knee, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Like the animation actually looks like it's bleeding quite a lot. And it's actually like gushing out of that building, but it's still there.
It's gushing out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see. Well, if Terran buildings can burn to death, why can't a hatchery like bleed to death?
That's a good question.
But anyways, let's get back into the game as we now see Mutalisk going to try to snipe down a tank, unable to do so. There's too many Marines there. Missile turrets have been established as well as the Mutalisk realize, hey, I got numbers on you. I can take you out with no problem whatsoever.
Yeah, Subby just realizing that as soon as stim wears off on those Marines, he can actually just engage them, and that's exactly what he did. They were so low on health because they had been stimmed twice. So Subby continuing to be a threat with this pack of Mutalisks, and he's going to take out another pack of Marines with him. Remaining actually pretty cost-effective in those because the Marines are such low health. They die very, very quickly. Another big drop, double medevac drop at the top once again. But Suppy has Ling Baneling kind of patrolling there, waiting for it.
Yeah, you got to be really careful with that, though. I've seen Terran players purposely drop one Marauder, detonate every single Baneling, and then move away. Like, I'll trade one Marauder for 5 Banelings. I'm really happy with that.
That's usually a pretty good trade.
Yeah. We'll see what's going to happen next. Murder not harvesting gas at his 4th base yet. He's really going heavy onto those Marines, but he is also going into Thors. And if Suppy's not careful, if he doesn't Magic Box because he hasn't needed to, he may fall prey to just one bad splash. They are going to be upgraded 2-0. And without armor upgrades, yeah, that's going to kill all of them. It's going to only takes... Yeah, 2 shots there as we now see the Mutalisk going to fly straight in. No missile turrets along the backside here. And all those SCVs are simply going to get destroyed. Missile turrets are all firing, though. And it looks like there's going to be a little bit of a trade here. Not quite sure what Murder is doing, where he's focusing. Finally realizing that he lost a lot of units. But a drop now happening on the top left-hand side, taking down an extractor. A spine crawler may go down, but we finally see a fungal growth coming in from an infestor.
Absolutely. I just want to take a chance to point out this supply count right now. Murderer is ahead by quite a bit. He's like 30 supply up, now 40 supply up, as he makes 11 more Marines at a time. So his production is like full force beyond belief. And Suppy has some infestors out, but he's going to have to be super cost effective against this push because Suppy is completely broke.
Yeah, we'll see what's going to happen here. You can see that the Terran also sitting on about 2,600 gas. That is a large amount of gas, and at some point, I got to think Ravens with Seeker missiles would be perfect as they counter late-game Zerg so well. Splash damage, you know, Broodlords don't move very, very quickly. If you can get a nice Seeker missile onto some Banelings, that works out as well as a nice round of Javelin missiles from the Thor hitting the back of that, and they're really thinning that out here. And now you see that the Marines are going to be taking out this hatchery. It doesn't look like Suppy wants to defend it as Murder now up to 200, and Suppy simply waiting for his Broodlords.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. He's got some infestors, but he really only has 4, and he needs to be so careful with them. There's not a lot of fungals that he has to deal with that. And, I mean, if you just take the unit count, Suppy only has 60 drones. So I feel like the constant drop aggression from Murder has really kind of put Suppy on the back foot, despite having Mutalisk to deal most effectively with drops. He has taken a lot of damage from that. I mean, if we take a look at the units lost tab, 37 workers killed for Murder, so he's been doing a great job keeping Suppy from getting that economy that he wants to be able to just mass produce.
And right now, Murder is in trouble. He does see these Broodlords, and he's like, okay, I need to train Vikings, but I'm supply blocked or at maximum food. He's now down to 196 after losing a couple Marines. And he is going into double starport to be able to really train up those units as we now see a drop going to be happening on the top left-hand side of the map, but a major engagement in the center. Now, siege tanks all fortified. One Thor getting absolutely torn apart there as the Marines doing a little bit of a dance, but you got to be careful when you dance with infestors because infestors can put a stop to the show.
Absolutely. It looks like, though, the scan is going to see those Broodlords. And Suppy actually flying in with those Mutalisks. That seems like a little bit of a misstep to me. Banelings, though, rolling in and killing so many Marines. Where are the infestors?
And those infestors look like they were all down by siege tanks as a drop does hit the top left-hand side. And Murder giving the only victory here on Wednesday Night Starcraft over a xSix gaming player.
Yeah.